Namaste. Hello, everybody. How to write course outcomes and course educational objectives is the topic of this lecture. Before this, we have discussed on how to write program outcomes and program objectives. We know that in every university there are programs, and under each program there are many courses which are offered. So when we say course outcomes, when the course is delivered, how does it bring changes in the students? What are the learning outcomes? So in other words, we'll also say that course outcomes means course learning outcomes, course learning objectives, course objectives and learning objectives. What do I want my students to know or be able to do at the end of my course? We always plan that when student will be opting for my course, what will be the aim of that course, providing the appropriate skill set, knowledge and values in the students. How much change, how much outcome in terms of skill set, knowledge and values the course will bring, and in order to do so, how to write the course outcomes very effectively, let us try to understand in this lecture. So this is a common OBE framework which we have seen in case of program outcomes also. In outcome-based education framework, there are main components, namely teaching and learning process, assessment, improvement, and outcomes. So the outcomes, which are program outcomes and objectives, they are derived from the vision and mission statements of the university. And as we know that each program consists of a number of courses. So program learning outcome, under program learning outcome, there are course learning outcomes. Each course will have a few course learning outcomes. All course learning outcomes might not be same with all program learning outcomes. That we will understand. And then learning outcomes, learning activities that will help the students to demonstrate those outcomes. Learning assessment is important thing. What will be the ways in which the assessment of learning outcome will be made, so that we will understand how much the students have been able to learn from a course. So assessment, and if there is a gap, that what we set as an objective, and actually the students are able to not completely achieve the objective, what is the gap? So accordingly there will be improvement, and then we'll try to improve either the teaching learning pedagogies and other activities related to curriculum learning processes. Even if there is need of improving the assessment tools, that also can be done. So let's, with this background, understand what are the course educational objectives. So look at the diagram. Just, the course aims to provide appropriate knowledge, skill and values. So what is the aim? What is the objective of a particular course? Statements of what you intend to teach or cover in the learning experience. During the delivery or conduction of a course, what do you intend to teach? What do you intend to cover? What do you intend to see the changes, to bring the changes in the students? More specific than learning goals, instructor centric rather than student centric, because mostly the objectives of the course are articulated by the teacher, by the faculty, by the instructor. How much those objectives are made, how much those objectives are attained, it depends on students outcome. That is course outcome, we'll understand separately. Usefulness, useful in helping you formulate more specific learning outcomes. So when you articulate objectives, then with the help of objectives, we can clearly articulate, clearly understand, in formulating the learning outcomes as well. So say, for example, a course, mass communication. Let's not talk about only engineering, computer science engineering, or any engineering. The course educational objectives and outcomes will be there for all the disciplines, all the programs, all the courses, be it engineering, science, or arts related courses. So let's talk about mass communication. We will cover historical perspective and debates about the role of mass communication in 20th century. So that is the objective, that the teacher is aiming to cover historical perspective and debates. When the course will be completed, then that time we will see how much it was covered. That will be evaluated in terms of the outcome. But we are talking currently in terms of objectives. Students will understand the impacts and effects of new media on identity formation. So this is one more objective related to mass communication. So similar manner, we can write course objectives for all the courses. Say the course is on artificial intelligence. So we can say that we will cover the mathematical and cognitive aspects of artificial intelligence. We can also say that we will cover the potential applications of artificial intelligence and the challenges and issues of artificial intelligence. Like that, for any course, we can write the aims and objectives. How to write effective course educational objectives and the course learning outcomes. For instructors, making decision about selecting course content, it helps when we write course objectives or course outcomes. It helps these instructors to make decision about selecting the course content. When you are writing certain objectives and outcomes, and accordingly you will be, you will be developing the course content. So you get that help in also designing assessment to evaluate student progress. So when you are having a course content with the aim that this much you will be able to cover, so to assess that course content, you will also be able to design the assessment, developing instructional activities. What are the teaching pedagogies? What are the teaching materials and activities that will be used, which will facilitate the student learning. So for instructors from and measuring assessing of student learning. For students' perspective, making a decision about whether the course is good, suitable for their goals and background. Students have certain background. They want to do certain number of courses. They have something in their mind with some background knowledge and with some aim they have. They have some aims, they have some goals, and with some background knowledge. They think that whether this course is suitable or not. So on the basis of course objective statements, course learning outcome statements, student will have some interest and understanding about whether to choose this course or not. Identifying what will be needed in order to be successful in the course. So students will also be able to understand what kind of requirement is needed, what kind of prerequisite is needed, how much time, how much involvement is needed in order to do this course successfully. And also developing the incremental skills necessary to achieve expertise in the course. So gradually, what kind of skill set is needed, what kind of skill set will be developed in order to have mastery or expertise in the course. That also the students will be able to develop. So therefore, when you write effective course learning outcomes and objectives, that not only help the faculty but also help the student, and it rather helps more to these students because the outcome based education, the concept of outcome and objective is more relevant in context with the student centric approach. Measuring, assessing their own progress and learning. Students will also be able to understand whether they will be able to do self assessment, self learning, and what kind of learning, how much learning they will be able to do that. They'll be able to attain that. They also might have some idea when they see the course content and description that includes mainly the course learning outcomes and the learning objectives. And remember, when we write, just like program outcomes we have talked in the previous lecture, whenever we are articulating or formulating or writing course objectives and outcomes, especially the objectives, must be smart objectives. And it means we have already seen in the previous lecture, must be very specific to the course. It must not be beyond the course. There may be many program objectives, but your course might have one or two or three objectives out of program objectives. So must be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. For example, you have a programming course. So you can aim that the course will cover, aiming at developing good programming knowledge in the students. But you can't say that the design of algorithm, design of computer system is also to be covered in this course. It's not possible. That may be there in computer science and engineering as the objective. But for your course, which is on programming, you can say that this will give the programming knowledge in order to solve some real-time problems. So it must be measurable, it must be achievable, doable, it must be result oriented, relevant, and it must be time bound. So when they see the course content, course learning outcomes and objectives, they must see that, yeah, they are doing this course for 3 months, for 90 days. So in next 90 days, they will be able to achieve this much. So that time and relevance are also very important when we talk about writing effective outcomes and objectives for courses. Remember, not for program, because when we actually come from vision and mission statement to the program education objectives, then we come to program outcomes, then we go for course education objectives and course outcomes. So we are going down means we are becoming more specific, we are becoming more narrowed. So we have to be very specific when we are writing the course objectives and course outcomes. And writing about course outcome and course learning outcomes, it describes the students what is expected from them when they'll complete this course, what they're expected to demonstrate, what they're expected to demonstrate rather after graduating, when they will join the profession or a career, what they will demonstrate there based on the learning and understanding of the course. So the learning outcomes will actually reflect the actual impact of learning, the change the course has brought in the students in terms of knowledge, values, and skill set. And it also helps them to plan appropriate teaching strategies, materials, and assessments, learn from and make changes to curriculum to improve the student learning. If we need to do all these things to get good outcomes, we need to learn from and make changes to curriculum continuously to improve the student learning, assess how the outcomes of single course align with the larger outcomes for the entire program. So whenever we are writing a course outcome or learning outcome, it must be aligned with the program outcomes, which are the larger outcomes for a program. But our course is a specific course. So what is the expected outcome? You can say that for a computer science student, a student will be able to demonstrate brilliant programming skill. But whether at the end of your course, is able to do that or not, that is different thing that comes under the assessment and attainment. What is important is in program outcomes of computer science and engineering also, there will be a statement related to programming and mathematical knowledge. So here also your course outcome is contributing to one of your program outcomes. That is important. Learning outcomes help the students anticipate what they will gain from the course. That there is expected outcome which has been declared as the learning outcome. So students will also be anticipating what they will be gaining from this course once they complete this course. So at the end of course, what is their expected gain that they will be able to see. So from both point of view, teachers as well as students, uh, there are enough adequate information, related to learning outcomes. Effective course learning outcomes, the learning design is very important for these learning outcomes, and assessments and results and teaching pedagogies. So when you actually want to get excellent learning outcome, assessment plays very important role. Continuous assessment, what are the tools we are using to assess, that is very important. In coming lecture we will talk about assessment tools, what are the teaching techniques, what are the teaching pedagogies. And you cannot simply write that this we are going to achieve in the this particular course. It depends on what are your teaching pedagogies, what are the assessment techniques and tools, what are the assessments for all those components which are involved in the course conduction. It may be direct assessment, it may be indirect assessment, that will talk in coming lecture. So create effective course learning outcomes clearly written course level and module level outcomes. Even if you go further down, course is divided into number of lectures and number of topics. So in each topic, you have to see that when a student understands or does a topic, what will be the topic outcome, what will be the lecture outcome, and those lecture outcomes, topic outcomes must be aligned to the course outcome. Inform both way students are evaluated in a course and the way the course will be organized. Effective learning outcomes are always student centered, measurable, concise, meaningful, achievable, and outcome based. Whenever these things are there, these properties are there in the outcomes, that outcome will be called as effective outcome. Let's talk about some examples. Again, core, say, this I have already explained, college level core competencies. We expect that there are some graduate attributes students is supposed to have, student is supposed to, demonstrate. Under that, program level outcomes are determined, they are written, and then we have course level outcomes in all different courses. So let's talk about some examples. Say there is a course quantitative reasoning and technological literacy. So as a result of participating in this course, students will be able to evaluate statistical claims in the popular press. I mean, this may be under a program, say mass communication. Under mass communication, there is a quantitative, not qualitative, quantitative reasoning and technological literacy. So this, with these students will be able to evaluate some statistical claims. This is just an example how to write. As a result of completing ethics and research, there is another course. We are not talking about a program, whether it's a mass communication, Bachelor of Arts, or Bachelor of Engineering, Computer Science. We are talking about a course. As a result of completing ethics and research one, student will be able to describe potential impact of scientific ethical conflicts on research findings. So this is one of the expected outcome we are writing, that when student will do this course, student will be able to describe the ethical conflicts and, and that too, the impact of ethical conflicts on research findings. I think there is one more. As a result of completing, there is a course money and banking. So students will be able to determine the cost benefits and shortcomings of various cash management strategies. So this is how you have to write your outcomes very effectively. It may be any course, it may be computer architecture, maybe operating system, maybe a communication, maybe mathematics. What students will be able to do once they will complete this course. This is not your objective or aim statement. This is the attainment statement, expected outcome statement that will be at the end of doing the course. How to write? There are some important, this is an important comparison. Say not student centered. When you write, you have to see the outcomes or objectives related to course must be student centric, measurable, clear, and concise. Let us understand how do we differentiate between whether it is student centric or student not centric. When we write, different theories of personality development will be explored through lectures, readings, and assignments. Just read this statement and compare with other. Student will name each of theory of personality development and describe the characteristics. So here what we are saying, student will name each theory of personality development. So it's a student centric where student is involved. Here in the first one, we are saying different theories of personality development will be explored. But in the second statement, we are saying student will be able to name each theory of personality development. Student will be able to describe the key characteristics of each theory of the personality development. This may be related to a course called as personality development. See how to assess whether it's a measurable or not. When we say students will understand symbolism, it's a generic statement. Whether student will be involved in understanding or not, that is not clear. But when you say students will be able to identify examples of symbolism in some stories and incorporate symbolism in their own writing. So they are actually practicing and they are involved in identifying the examples. They're actually able to highlight some examples, explain some examples, and not only that, they're also able to incorporate some of the symbolism, their own writing styles. When the outcome, whether it's clear or not, let's see one more example. Students will be able to analyze American history. So clarity is not there. But when we rewrite it, students will be able to analyze how American foreign policy history relates to current trends in American policy, foreign policy. So it's very clear. Clarity is there. You can't write a vague statement. You can't write statement which is not measurable. And then, of course, you see the last one. Your objectives or outcome statement must be concise. It must not be the big paragraph. Like you see this one, students will be able to analyze American foreign policy from 18th century diplomatic relations with Europe to doctrine, considering the ways in which shifts from expansionism and manifest destiny to isolationism and protectionism impacted relations with neighboring nations and Native Americans. Rather than this big paragraph, you can simply say students will be able to identify how changes in American foreign policy during 18th and 19th century impacted the relations with neighboring nations and Native Americans. So it must be concise. This is just an example. You can't write, big paragraphs or more and more number of statements in a single outcome or objective. So related to the core program outcomes and core program objectives, we have talked about the role of Bloom's taxonomy for choosing the action verbs, the powerful verbs. In the similar manner, when we write course objectives and outcomes, so in the similar manner, we have to be very careful in choosing the verbs. And we have already seen in our previous lecture that recall has the lowest order of cognitive ability and create is having the highest order. But when you want to use, when we actually want to use create in our course outcome and objective statements, rather than writing create or in place of creating, there are some alternative words like plan, invent, design, construct, synthesize, etc. When we want to actually write evaluate, there are some powerful verbs justify, assess, recommend, rate, inspect. When we want to say students will be able to evaluate, we can say students will be able to inspect, students will be able to assess. Similarly, when we want to write students will be able to apply, we can say students will be able to use, students will be able to examine, students will be able to classify, something like this. So the discussion on writing course outcome and course objectives is even more important than writing program outcomes and program objectives, because course is under a program and each course plays a significant role in achieving the program outcomes and objectives of a program. And therefore the course outcome and course objectives are very specific, and they are more important than the program outcomes and objectives. And thus it's very important to understand how effectively we have to write or we need to write the course outcomes and the objectives. Hope this lecture will help in writing course objectives and course outcomes for any course of any program. The program may be related to science, arts, philosophy, commerce, engineering. I think for any course, what are the broader guidelines we have understood, that in a course what is expected outcome and what I aim to cover in the course, and how this is going to bring some change in the students in terms of the skill set, knowledge, and the values. That only we have to see in any course, and for any course we can write the course outcomes and objectives as the learning outcomes and objectives for a course very effectively. Thank you.